Hello everyone, my name is Sumeet Pamma and I have been a Companis worker since February of this year. So I found Companis through Seattle University where I'm getting my master's in nonprofit leadership. So I joined that program hoping to learn how to start a nonprofit that serves migrant workers. See, I'm a farmer by trade from the sticks of California. My parents immigrated to California in 1978 from Punjab, India, and have been living out the American dream since. They worked hard, saved their money, bought 40 acres of land, and began farming peaches. Those 40 acres enabled them to put 4 kids through college and pay for all 3 of my sister's weddings, which is a big deal in the Indian culture. So for them, their move to California has been a major success. This isn't always the case for people who come to this country, though. See, my parents had some extra help. A few years after my parents immigrated, my maternal grandparents did too, with the sole purpose of raising my sisters and I so my parents could focus on making money and working to create a better life for their kids. My grandparents have had the most impactful influence on my life. They taught me the importance of helping others and unconditionally loving everyone. Both were baptized Sikhs, a religion born in Punjab, India, in the late 1400s. And a major part of Sikhism is seva, also known as selfless service. This work or service is performed without any thought or reward of personal benefit. So my grandma would walk me to the bus stop when I was in elementary school, and she would always ask me to check on the other kids waiting at the bus stop with me. She didn't speak any English, so she would ask me to ask them how they were doing and if they needed anything. At the time, it made absolutely no sense to me. I'm like, Grandma, why do you want to know about these kids, right? So, BBG, the Punjabi word for grandmother, why do we care how these kids are doing? She replied, because they're humans, Sumeet, and God created us all equal. That answer, as simple as it is, can have a profound impact on this world. Throughout my childhood, I always felt the responsibility to others. If there was a kid sitting alone at lunch, I'd sit next to them. When picking teams to play a game, I would give up my spot to someone that didn't get picked. And those actions gave me a sense of pride and purpose. I remember it was the last week of high school, and my classmates and I were sitting around, we were reminiscing, and my grandma came up. Those kids who used to wait at the bus stop with me, they remembered how she'd want to know how they were doing. They also didn't understand at the time why she wanted to know, but now they appreciated it. They joked about how she was everyone's grandmother at that bus stop. So I'm the youngest of my siblings, and when I graduated high school, my grandparents decided to move back home to India. They had accomplished what they came here to do, and they raised my sisters and I, and gave my parents the opportunity to make 2 incomes without having to pay for childcare. That's the primary reason they were capable of purchasing land in this country and giving me a privilege that they never had. I've had an interesting path to where I'm standing right now. The years after my grandparents left, I was only focused on having fun. Instead of going to the farm, helping out my dad, I would choose to go to concerts with my friends. If my aunt needed a ride to a doctor's appointment, I would make up an excuse as to why I couldn't take her. I became super competitive with my friends and believed that I needed to do something that I considered better than them. As time went on, I found myself in this cycle of selfishness, and it did not feel good. Something was clearly missing from my life, but I constantly tried to mask that feeling with being more selfish. I was no longer the kid my grandparents had raised, and I was not living a life in the name of God. October 30th, 2015, I received a phone call from India. It was an uncle of mine calling to tell us that my grandmother had passed. This was the first death I had experienced in my family, and so I didn't quite know how to handle it. Weeks prior, my grandmother had been asking me to come visit, but I didn't go. I made excuses as to why I couldn't. The weeks after her death were difficult. I couldn't focus in class, alienated myself from people who care about me, and found myself lying in bed every night asking the same question. Sumeet, why didn't you go? This woman left her home, and for over 20 years she came to raise my sisters and me. For 18 years of my life, she acted as my personal bodyguard, shielding me from all the sadness in the world, teaching me the ways of God so I can someday make the world a happier place that works for all. So January 2016, I decided to go to India and visit my grandfather and plant roses where my grandmother had been put to rest. She was obsessed with roses. It was something else. I confessed to my grandpa how horrible I felt and how I had let him and my grandma down. I was a total wreck at this time, crying harder than I ever had. And I remember looking up at him, and he was laughing at me. When I asked him, I was like, "Why are you laughing?" And he called me the Punjabi equivalent of a nincompoop. And so he told me that he and my grandma didn't have the capacity of being disappointed in me because they were too filled with love. It had taken them years of meditation and prayer to become people that I knew them as. So finally, before I left, he reminded me that I still had a life to live, which meant I could still be the person God intended me to be. James 1:22 says, "You must be doers of the word and not only hearers who mislead themselves." I found my way back when I returned home from India. My grandparents had shown me what it meant to be a follower of God. They showed me what it meant to be human. They had showed me what it meant to be selfless. I realized my purpose was to give others the same opportunities I had. This is why I came to Seattle, so I can learn what I need to do to ensure all parents have what they need so they can give their kids a better life. God gave me a gift in the form of two people who put everyone and everything before themselves. It is now my responsibility to use that gift to help others. I want to thank Companis and all those who are helping me along this journey, and all those are you. Before Companis, I was getting the education I need to accomplish my goals, but I wasn't putting it into practice. So my placement at Bird Bar Place has changed that. Every day I get the opportunity to positively impact the lives of others and put into practice not only what I learned in school, but the ideals instilled in me by my grandparents. So thank you, and God bless you.